The shipping container slipped from Lyra's grip and crashed against the metal floor. 3 security officers turned to stare, their reptilian eyes gleaming with amusement. She flexed her delicate fingers, trying to stop them from trembling. The container weighed almost nothing by galactic standards, but for a Solari, it might as well have been a boulder. "Watch where you're going, Moth," Brutic said, his massive frame blocking the corridor. He was Kravish, built like a walking tank with gray skin thick as armor plating. His uniform stretched tight across muscles designed for crushing prey. "You might hurt yourself." His companions laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Lyra kept her head down, her antennae pressed flat against her skull. That was the Solari way. Stay small. Stay quiet. Survive. "I apologize," she whispered, reaching for the container again. Her wings, folded tight against her back, trembled slightly. They were beautiful wings, iridescent and delicate, marking her as prey to every predator species in the galaxy. Brutic kicked the container down the hall. It tumbled end over end, scattering its contents across the floor. "Oops, better clean that up before someone files a complaint." Lyra bent to gather the scattered tools and datapads. Her fingers worked quickly, practiced at making herself invisible. She had been on Meridian Station for 3 days now, assigned as a cultural liaison for her people. The job description promised respect and diplomatic immunity. Reality provided neither. A maintenance hatch opened nearby. A human emerged, tool belt hanging from his waist, grease staining his work shirt. He was average height for his species, with brown hair and unremarkable features. His eyes swept the scene, taking in the scattered supplies and Lyra's hunched form. "Problem here?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Brutic turned slowly, looking down at the human. "No problem, mammal. Just teaching the Moth about gravity." The human walked closer. His movements were loose and easy, nothing like the aggressive posture of the Kravish. "Name's Daniel. I work maintenance on this level." He knelt beside Lyra and started gathering the scattered items. "These look important." "They're mine," Lyra said softly. "Thank you, but you don't need to help." "I know I don't need to." Daniel placed a datapad in her hands. "Doesn't mean I shouldn't." Brutic snorted. Another weak species playing caretaker. How touching. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over both of them. "Tell me, human, does your species enjoy collecting failures? Is that why you help the prey?" Daniel stood up slowly. He barely reached Brutic's chest, but something in his posture shifted. The friendliness remained in his expression, but his eyes went flat and cold. "My species enjoys helping people who deserve help. We also enjoy correcting bullies. It's a hobby, correcting." Brutic's laugh boomed through the corridor. "You're a maintenance worker. I'm station security. You want to correct me, little mammal?" Daniel smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just saying accidents happen on stations. Environmental systems malfunction. Gravity plates glitch. Airlocks sometimes cycle at weird times." He paused, still smiling. "Especially in areas where security doesn't patrol regularly." The threat hung in the air between them. Brutic's hand moved to his shock baton, but he didn't draw it. Something about the human's complete lack of fear made him hesitate. "Come on," one of Brutic's companions said. "We're wasting time on trash." Brutic stared at Daniel for another long moment, then turned away. "Stay out of security business, human. Next time I won't be so patient." They left, their heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Lyra remained frozen, clutching her supplies. Daniel watched them go, his expression never changing. "Thank you," Lyra said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Daniel turned to her, and the warmth returned to his face. "Yeah, I did. Nobody deserves that treatment." He extended his hand. "Daniel Cross. I've been working this station for 2 years." Lyra carefully shook his hand. His grip was gentle, mindful of her fragile bones. "Lyra, I'm with the Solari diplomatic mission, though I'm beginning to think that was a mistake. Give it time. Not everyone here is like Brutic." Daniel picked up the last datapad and handed it to her. "But if anyone gives you trouble, my workstation is in Section 7, Sublevel 3. I'm usually there if I'm not crawling through maintenance ducts. Why would you help me? You don't know me." Daniel shrugged. Where I come from, you don't need to know someone to help them. You just need to see them getting pushed around by someone bigger. He tapped his tool belt. Besides, humans have a thing about protecting people who can't protect themselves. It's in our nature. Lyra watched him disappear back into the maintenance hatch. Her empathic senses, naturally attuned to emotional states, had picked up something strange from a human. Beneath his friendly exterior, she had felt something else. Something patient and calculating. Something that watched and waited. That IT had felt like standing near a sleeping predator. Down the corridor, Brudek was laughing with his crew. Did you see that? The human thinks he's dangerous. Threatened me with maintenance accidents. Forget him, another guard said. He's as weak as the moth. Soft mammals playing at civilization. Brudek nodded, but something nagged at him. The human's eyes. They had been completely calm, even when facing a Kravish warrior. No fear, no anger, just cold assessment. He shook off the thought. Humans were nothing. Weak primates who had barely left their homeworld before joining the galactic community. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They were barely worth noticing in the maintenance tunnels. Daniel pulled up Brudek's personnel file on his datapad. He studied the Kravish anatomy, noting weak points and vulnerabilities. His fingers moved across the screen, accessing security camera locations and shift schedules. Old habits die hard, and Daniel had learned patience in harder places than this station. He had learned that the best way to deal with a bully was not to match their strength, but to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless when necessary. Lyra seemed kind. She reminded him of people he had known, people who needed protection in a cruel universe. And Daniel Cross was very good at protection, that he saved the files and closed the datapad. Then he smiled to himself in the darkness of the maintenance tunnel and continued his work. Lyra's work terminal blinked offline for the third time that morning. She pressed the reset button, watching the screen flicker before dying completely. Someone had switched her assigned workspace to a section with higher gravity, far beyond what Solari physiology could handle comfortably. Her legs ached. Her wings felt like lead weights pulling at her shoulders. Every breath came harder in the thick, heavy air. Equipment malfunction. Thali slithered past her desk, his snake-like body moving with oily grace. The council representative barely glanced at her struggles. Perhaps you should file a maintenance request. Though I hear they're quite backed up. Lyra knew better than to complain. She had filed 3 reports already. All had been dismissed as clerical errors or misunderstandings. The message was clear. Solari concerns didn't matter. She dragged herself to the door, her muscles screaming protest. The pressure differential between the corridor and her workspace hit her like a physical blow. Her right wing caught on the door frame, and she felt something tear. Pain lanced through her shoulder. She stumbled into the hallway, gasping, trying not to cry out. The torn membrane of her wing hung at an odd angle, leaking clear fluid. Behind her, she heard laughter. Brudek and 2 of his security team stood near the observation window, their recording devices pointed at her. They had watched the whole thing. Look at that, one of them said. Natural selection in action. Brudek grinned, showing rows of thick, blunt teeth. Save that footage. The guys back home will love it. Nothing funnier than watching prey species fail. Lyra limped toward the medical bay, each step sending fresh waves of pain through her body. The corridor seemed endless. Other species passed her, some glancing with pity, most simply looking away. Getting involved meant becoming a target. The medical bay doors slid open. An automated scanner assessed her injuries and directed her to a treatment pod. The attending physician, a bored-looking insectoid, administered pain medication and began sealing the torn wing membrane. You should be more careful, the doctor said, not unkindly. Solari wings are fragile. Avoid high-gravity zones. I didn't choose that workspace, Lyra said quietly. I was assigned there. The doctor's antennae twitched, but they said nothing. Everyone knew what was happening. Nobody wanted to acknowledge it. Lyra sat in the treatment pod, her wing bandaged and splinted, staring at the sterile white walls. This wasn't new. Her people had been prey for millennia. Other species had hunted them, enslaved them, nearly driven them to extinction twice. The Solari survived by being invisible, by accepting their place at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, but still hurt, not just physically, but in her soul. The medical bay doors opened again. Daniel Cross entered, his work shirt stained with coolant. His eyes found her immediately, and his expression darkened. What happened? He crossed her pod in 3 quick steps. An accident. Lyra couldn't meet his eyes. I'm Phoenix. That's not an accident. Daniel examined her wing without touching it, his gaze professional and thorough. That's a pressure injury. Someone put you in the wrong environment. It was my assigned workspace. Who assigned it? Lyra hesitated. I don't want to cause trouble. Daniel pulled up a nearby stool and sat down, putting himself at her eye level. His voice remained gentle, but something cold crept into his tone. Lyra, I'm going to ask you something. I need you to be honest. Do you want this to stop? How? The word came out broken. My people don't fight. We can't. We're not built for it. Every species stronger than us has made that very clear throughout our history. I didn't ask if your people fight, Daniel said. I asked if you want this to stop. Lyra looked at him properly for the first time. His brown eyes held something she couldn't quite identify. Not pity, which she had seen too often. Not anger, though that was there too. Something else. Something patient and dangerous. Yes, she whispered. I wanted to stop. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, then it stops. You can't fight them. You're one person, and they're security officers with weapons and authority. I know. Daniel stood up, checking his data pad. But humans don't always fight the way other species expect. We evolve differently. We learn different lessons. He paused at the door. Get some rest. And Lyra, don't go back to that workspace. File a medical exemption. If anyone gives you problems, tell them to talk to me. He left before she could respond. 2 corridors away. Brudick lounged in the security office, replaying the footage of Lyra's wing injury. His companions gathered around, making bets on how long before she requested a transfer. 3 days, one said. She's already broken. 1 week, another countered. The moths are stubborn about refusing to admit defeat. Thales entered the office, his scaled face twisting into what passed for a smile among the species. Gentlemen, I trust everything is proceeding smoothly. Very smoothly, Brudick said. The Solari is learning her place. As they all should. Excellent. The Council prefers when inferior species understand the natural order. Thales examined the footage with approval, though do try to avoid permanent damage. We don't want formal complaints from their homeworld. Of course, Representative. Brudick paused the video on a frame of Lyra's pain-twisted face. Just enough pressure to encourage voluntary departure. Above them, hidden in the maintenance duct, Daniel recorded every word. His data pad captured video and audio in perfect clarity. His face remained expressionless as he listened to them laugh. When they finished and left the office, Daniel remained in the duct for another 10 minutes, accessing the station's security network. His fingers moved across the pad with practiced efficiency. He had learned these skills in another life, before he became a simple maintenance worker. People always underestimated maintenance workers. They saw janitors and technicians, not the people who knew every weakness in every system, who could access every restricted area, who understood exactly how everything worked, and how everything could break. Daniel pulled up Brudick's personal schedule, his shift rotations, his preferred routes through the station, his quarters location, his medical records, Kravish physiology, thick skin, dense muscle, heavy bone structure, strong but slow, reliant on brute force, vulnerable to sustained pressure, sensory overload, and psychological stress. Daniel saved everything to an encrypted file. Then he pulled up the duty roster for Brudick's security team. 5 officers total, all predator species, all convinced of their natural superiority. They had hurt Lyra deliberately. For entertainment, they had documented it and laughed. Daniel closed his datapad and crawled through the maintenance duct towards sublevel 3. His movements were silent, efficient, practiced. People always asked humans why they helped the weak, why they protected those who couldn't protect themselves. The answer was simple. Humans remembered being prey. They remembered running from bigger, stronger predators. They remembered the fear and helplessness, and they remembered what they became to survive. Not the strongest species, not the fastest, but the smartest, the most patient, the most ruthlessly efficient when something they cared about was threatened. Daniel reached his workstation and began pulling up schematics for the security office. Environmental controls, lighting systems, surveillance feeds. He smiled to himself in the dim light. Lesson 1 was about to begin. The security officer's scream echoed through the cargo bay at 0300 hours. By the time his team arrived, he was unconscious, curled in a corner, his right hand bent at impossible angles. "What happened?" Brudick demanded, shaking his subordinate awake. The officer's eyes were wide with terror. "Something was in here, in the dark. I heard breathing, footsteps, but the lights wouldn't turn on. Then it grabbed me, and I felt bones breaking, and there was this face, this smiling human face, and a human did this." Brudick examined the broken hand. 12 fractures, precise and deliberate. "You're telling me a maintenance worker overpowered you?" It wasn't normal. The way it moved, the way it smiled. The officer was shaking. It knew exactly how much pressure to apply, like it had done this before. Brudick filed an incident report, but something about the story disturbed him. Humans weren't fighters. They were soft, weak, barely worth noticing. Yet his officer, a trained security professional, sat trembling like prey. 2 days later, another officer fell down a maintenance shaft. He survived, but the fall had been calculated with disturbing precision. Far enough to injure, not far enough to kill. When questioned, he insisted something had pulled him, something that understood gravity and distance and breaking points. The station medical officer found the pattern of injuries fascinating. Whoever did this has extensive knowledge of multiple species physiology. These aren't random attacks. They're lessons in vulnerability. On the third incident, Brudick found them. Dead vermin, arranged outside his quarters in careful patterns. When translated from human script, they spelled "predator at play." He ordered surveillance footage reviewed. Every incident showed the same thing. Camera glitches, static interference, blind spots that shouldn't exist. Whoever was doing this understood the security system better than security did. Lyra discovered Daniel in the station archives at midnight, surrounded by holographic displays of anatomy charts and building schematics. She had come looking for historical records about Solari diplomacy. Instead, she found him studying Kravish nervous systems with the focus of a surgeon. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. Daniel didn't startle. He simply looked up, his expression calm. "Research. This is restricted medical data, and station security layouts, and personnel files." Lyra's antennae quivered with confusion and growing alarm. "Daniel, the attacks on security officers. The accidents. That's you, isn't it? Attacks." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "I haven't attacked anyone. I've been educating them about vulnerability. There's a difference. You're hurting them." "No." Daniel stood up, his movements precise. "I'm teaching them what it feels like to be helpless, to be targeted, to lie awake wondering when the next incident will occur." He gestured to the anatomical displays. "Every species has weak points. Kravish have sensitive nerve clusters here and here. Their thick skin is actually a disadvantage in confined spaces. Their reliance on strength makes them predictable." Lyra stepped back. Her empathic senses screamed danger, but Daniel's emotional state remained eerily controlled. Not angry, not cruel, just methodical. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because they hurt you. Deliberately. Repeatedly. For entertainment." Daniel closed the holographic displays. "And because I asked you if you wanted it to stop. You said yes. I didn't ask you to become a monster. I'm not a monster." Daniel's voice remained gentle, almost kind. "I'm a human. We're very good at switching between protector and predator. It's how we survived." He pulled up his sleeve, showing old scars on his forearm. "I've been the helpless one before. I know what it's like. I swore I'd never let it happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone I could help." Lyra stared at the scars, trying to process what she was seeing. This quiet maintenance worker, who had helped her gather scattered supplies, who spoke with such gentleness, was systematically dismantling the security team through psychological warfare. They filed reports, she said. They're looking for whoever is doing this. Let them look. Daniel smiled, and Lyra finally understood why his officer had been so terrified. It wasn't a cruel smile or an angry one. It was the smile of something that enjoyed the hunt. I've been invisible my whole career here. People see maintenance workers every day and never really notice them. We're background noise. Furniture. Until we want to be seen. Folly's dismissed all the reports. He thinks they're just accidents. I know. I've been monitoring his communications. Daniel pulled up another file. He's been actively encouraging the harassment. Calls it maintaining natural hierarchy. His expression darkened. That changes the equation significantly. Lyra felt something crack inside her. Part of her, the part trained to accept and submit, wanted to tell Daniel to stop, to let it go, to accept their place in the galactic order. But another part, a part she barely recognized, felt something else. Satisfaction. Relief. The fierce joy of finally having someone fight back. Please don't kill anyone, she whispered. I won't. Daniel's voice softened. I don't need to kill them. I just need them to understand that they're not the apex predators they think they are. That there's always something higher on the food chain, something smarter, something more patient. He walked to the door, then paused. Humans spent 200,000 years being hunted, eaten, killed by things bigger and stronger than us. You know what we did? We didn't get stronger. We got smarter. We learned a plan, to coordinate, to turn our weaknesses into weapons. And now you hunt the hunters. No. Daniel looked back at her, his eyes reflecting the dim archive lights. Now I teach them that prey and predator are just temporary positions. And positions can change. After he left, Lyra sat alone in the archives, trembling. She accessed the incident reports, reading through the careful documentation of each event. The broken hand, the calculated fall, the psychological pressure. Daniel was right about one thing. He hadn't killed anyone. He had done something arguably worse. He had made them afraid that in the security office, Brutic stared at the dead vermin message. His team was increasingly paranoid, jumping at shadows, refusing night shifts. Morale was collapsing. It's just a human, he said to his reflection. Just a weak mammal playing games. But his hand shook as he reached for his shock bed. And when the lights flickered, just for a moment, he felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood. Fear of being prey. Brutic assembled his remaining team in the security briefing room. 5 Kravish warriors, the best the station had to offer, all armed with stun weapons and combat armor. Their prey, 1 human maintenance worker. This ends tonight, Brutic growled, his massive fists clenching. We track him, corner him, and teach him what happens when prey forgets its place. His second in command, still wearing a cast on his broken hand, nodded grimly. The human thinks he's clever. He's just a coward hiding in the dark. They moved through the upper levels methodically, checking Daniel's known locations. His workstation in sublevel 3 sat empty, tools arranged neatly on the bench. His assigned quarters showed no recent activity. Maintenance tunnels, Brutic decided. He's been using them to move around unseen. We flush him out. The team entered the access tunnel in tight formation, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The tunnels were narrow, forcing them to move single file. Condensation dripped from overhead pipes, and the air smelled of recycled atmosphere and machine oil. Contact, 1 warrior called. Movement ahead, 30 meters. They saw him. Daniel Cross, standing in a wider section of tunnel, wearing his standard work clothes. No weapons, no armor. He didn't run. Surrender, Brutic commanded. You're under arrest for assault on station personnel. Daniel smiled. Assault? I haven't touched anyone. I've just been doing my job. He gestured to the surrounding machinery. Maintenance, you know, keeping systems running, making sure everything works properly. You broke my officer's hand. Did I? Daniel's expression remained pleasant. Prove it. All your footage shows are glitches and accidents. No evidence of human involvement at all. Brutic charged, his patience exhausted. The tunnel shook with his footsteps. Daniel waited until the last possible moment, then dropped through an open maintenance hatch. Brutic skidded to a stop, nearly falling into the opening himself. Down there, he shouted, "Move!" The team descended through a series of access ladders, following glimpses of Daniel through the maze of tunnels. He was always just ahead, never quite cornered, leading them deeper into the station's infrastructure. The first warrior disappeared when they crossed a junction. One moment he was there, the next gone. They found him 10 minutes later, sitting in a flooded compartment, his stun weapon missing. He wouldn't speak, just stared ahead with wide eyes. "What happened?" Brudick demanded. "The lights," the warrior whispered. "They went out, and something grabbed me. Not hard, just enough to move me. Like I weighed nothing. Then water started filling the room, and I heard his voice saying, 'Don't worry, it won't go above your neck.'" Probably. The second warrior vanished in an environmental control junction. They found him trapped in an airlock cycle, unharmed but psychologically broken. The airlock had cycled him to the edge of spacing, stopped, pulled him back, then repeated. Over and over, never quite killing him, just showing him how close death could be. "This is insane," one of the remaining warriors said. "How's he doing this? He's one person, unarmed, and he's picking us apart." Brudick refused to retreat. They were Kravish, apex predators, warriors bred for combat. They couldn't be defeated by a single human using maintenance systems. They found Daniel in a central hub, surrounded by control panels and monitoring equipment. He sat casually on a storage crate, eating something from a ration pack. "Took you long enough," he said cheerfully. "I was getting bored." The third warrior charged without waiting for orders. Daniel didn't move until the last second, then triggered something on the control panel. A steam vent erupted between them, scalding hot vapor filling the corridor. The warriors stumbled back, disoriented. Daniel flowed around the steam like water, using the confusion to access another panel. Gravity plates shifted, pulling the warrior off balance. Maintenance drones, normally passive, suddenly activated and swarmed the disoriented Kravish. "You see," Daniel said, still perfectly calm, "you used a hunting with raw strength. Chase the prey. Corner it. Use superior force to win." He dodged another charge with minimal effort. Humans learn different lessons. We're not stronger than most things. We're not faster. We're not better armored. The warrior swung wildly. Daniel used the environment against him, leading him into panels that shocked on contact, past pipes that burst with pressurized coolant, through sections where gravity suddenly increased. "We're just smarter," Daniel finished. The warrior collapsed, exhausted and defeated, his weapon lying uselessly beside him. Two warriors remained with Brudick. They stood in the central chamber, weapons raised, watching Daniel circle them like a patient predator. "Your problem," Daniel said, his voice echoing in the enclosed space, "is that you think being a predator means being strong. It doesn't. Being a predator means being effective. And humans? We're very, very effective." He moved, and they lost him in the shadows. The lights flickered. Systems beeped warnings. One warrior fired his stun weapon at movement, hitting only a maintenance drone. "We hunted megafauna to extinction with stone tools." Daniel's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "We tracked prey for days without rest, running them to exhaustion. We coordinated, planned, used our environment as a weapon. That's what made us apex predators. Not strength, intelligence." Another warrior went down, tripping over a carefully placed cable, landing in a section where Daniel had disabled the safety barriers. He fell only 2 meters, but the psychological impact of nearly falling 20 was devastating. Brudick stood alone, turning in circles, trying to locate his enemy. His breathing came heavy and labored. For the first time in his military career, he understood what prey felt like. Daniel stepped from the shadows, his hands empty, his expression calm. "I could have killed all of you, easily." Maintenance accidents are the most common cause of death on space stations. A faulty airlock here, a gravity plate failure there, a coolant leak in the right place. He walked closer, unafraid. "But I didn't." "Know what?" Brudick raised his shock baton, but his hand trembled. "Because she asked me not to." Daniel's eyes were cold and steady. "Because humans protect the helpless, even from themselves." even from their own desire for revenge. He turned his back on Brutic and walked away, disappearing into the maintenance tunnels. Behind him, the massive Kravish warrior stood frozen, realizing he had just been shown mercy by something he had dismissed as prey. And mercy, Brutic understood with sudden clarity, was something only predators could afford to give. Brutic found Daniel 2 hours later on the observation deck. The human stood at the viewport, watching stars drift past the station. His posture was relaxed, almost meditative. No guards, no weapons, completely vulnerable or appearing to be. "I know you're there," Daniel said without turning. "Your footsteps are distinctive. Heavy, aggressive, angry." Brutic moved forward slowly, his armor removed, his shock baton left behind. He had sent his team to medical bay. All of them would survive, physically. Psychologically was another matter. "You humiliated my entire unit," Brutic said. "Made us look like children. I showed you what you showed Lyra. Helplessness. Fear. The understanding that someone bigger and meaner was targeting you for entertainment." Daniel finally turned. His face showed no triumph, no cruelty, just tired resignation. How did it feel? Brutic's jaw clenched. Pride demanded he attack, that he prove his superiority through combat. But something else held him back. The memory of being hunted through his own station, outmaneuvered at every turn, shown exactly how fragile his assumed dominance really was. "You're not even armed," Brutic said. "We could finish this, warrior to warrior. We could." Daniel's expression didn't change. "You're stronger than me, tougher, better natural weapons. In a straight fight with no tools or environment to exploit, you'd probably win." He paused. "But I'm never in straight fights. That's not how humans work. Coward tactics, survival tactics." Daniel walked closer, unafraid. "Your species evolved on a world with few predators. You became the apex through size and strength. My species evolved on a death world surrounded by things that wanted to eat us. We became apex through intelligence and cooperation." Brutic felt rage building, the need to prove himself through combat. But Daniel's words stuck in his mind. The human had defeated 5 trained warriors without throwing a single punch, without carrying a single weapon, just by being smarter. "I could snap your neck right now," Brutic growled. "You could try." Daniel stopped just out of arm's reach. "But you'd have to ask yourself, did I come here alone? Or did I plan for this conversation? Are there security measures I've activated that you don't know about? Have I documented everything you've done to Lyra, everything Thales encouraged, everything your team filmed and laughed about?" Brutic's fists clenched and unclenched. Every instinct screamed at him to attack, to prove his dominance through violence. But those same instincts had failed him in the tunnels. Failed against an opponent who fought with information and planning instead of muscle. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "For you to leave Lyra alone. For your team to leave all the weaker species alone. For the station to understand that prey and predator are just positions, not permanent states." Daniel's voice remained calm. "I want you to remember that somewhere on this station is a human who knows your weaknesses better than you do, who can access any system, any room, any secure area, who doesn't sleep like you do, doesn't tire like you do, and really doesn't like bullies. You're threatening station security. I am promising consequences." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "You hurt people because you could, because nobody stopped you, because you thought being strong made you untouchable." His eyes went cold. "I'm proof that you're not." Brutic stared at the human, truly seeing him for the first time. Not a maintenance worker, not a weak mammal. A predator wearing camouflage, patient and dangerous and completely committed to his purpose. "Why do you care about the Solari? They're not even your species. Don't have to be." Daniel looked back at the viewport. "Humans protect the helpless. It's what we do. Maybe because we remember being hunted ourselves. Maybe because we know what it's like to be afraid. Or maybe we're just wired that way, to form packs and protect the weak members." He shrugged. "Doesn't matter why. It's what we are." Lyra's voice interrupted from the doorway. "Stop." Both of them turned. She stood there, her wings still bandaged, her small frame trembling but her voice firm. "Daniel, I appreciate what you've done. But this has to end. She looked at Bruduk. And you need to understand something. Your strength didn't protect you. Your weapons didn't save you. A single unarmed human dismantled your entire team because he's smarter than you. Bruduk flinched as if struck. I don't want revenge, Lyra continued. I want respect. I want to do my job without fear. I want other weak species to have the same chance. She moved closer, her antennae raised in challenge. And I want you to know that there are consequences for cruelty now. Real consequences. Station alarms suddenly blared. Emergency lights flashed in the corridors. Bruduk's communicator crackled to life. Security to command. We have a situation. Someone released all the sealed evidence files to the Galactic Council. Everything. The harassment footage, the deliberately dangerous workspace assignments, Representative Thales' communications encouraging the behavior. It's all public record now. Bruduk stared at Daniel, who maintained his calm expression. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment I saw Lyra's torn wing. Daniel checked his datapad. I didn't want revenge. I wanted change. Fear was just the tool to make you understand. The evidence was always the real weapon. More voices crackled over the communicator. Council investigators were already en route. Formal charges being filed. Thales being removed from his position immediately. The entire station security team under review. You destroyed my career, Bruduk said quietly. No, Daniel's voice held no sympathy. You destroyed your career when you decided hurting people was entertainment. I just documented it. Lyra stepped between them. This is done. Both of you. No more hunting, no more violence, no more games. She looked at Bruduk. You're going to face consequences for your actions. Real ones from the council, not from Daniel's personal vendetta. Bruduk stood silent, his world collapsing around him. Everything he had built, his reputation as a warrior, his position of power, all of it crumbling because he had underestimated a human maintenance worker. I could still kill you, he said, but the words lacked conviction. You could, Daniel agreed. And then what? The evidence is already released. The council already knows. Killing me just adds murder to your charges. He stepped closer, unafraid, where you could accept that you lost, that you were beaten by someone smarter, more patient, and more committed than you ever were. The fight went out of Bruduk's eyes. He looked old suddenly, tired, defeated not by strength, but by something he couldn't punch or intimidate. Daniel turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Humans furgiva. Eventually, if you actually change, if you actually become better, we'll notice. We're good at second chances. His expression softened slightly. But we never forget, and we protect our own. He walked away, leaving Bruduk alone on the observation deck with Lyra. He's terrifying, Bruduk said quietly. Yes, Lyra's antennae trembled. But he's terrifying in defense of others. That's the difference between him and you. For months had passed since the council investigation. Bruduk and his team faced disciplinary transfers. Thales was removed from all diplomatic positions and barred from working with vulnerable species. The footage they had gleefully recorded became evidence of systematic harassment that shocked even the more predatory species representatives. Lyra sat in her new office, properly equipped for Solari physiology, with adjustable gravity and appropriate atmospheric controls. Her workspace looked out over the station gardens, a vast green space filled with plants from dozens of worlds that a delegation from the Solari homeworld arrived that morning. 3 senior diplomats, accompanied by human security advisors. The sight would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Humans, employed specifically to protect Solari interests. The Council is quite serious about this new protection initiative, the lead diplomat said during their meeting. Apparently, one human maintenance worker demonstrated its necessity quite effectively. Lyra smiled softly. Daniel Cross did what he thought was right. He terrified an entire security division and exposed systematic abuse across multiple stations. The diplomat's antennae quivered with something between awe and concern. Humans are more dangerous than we realized. They're dangerous when they need to be, Lyra corrected. But they're also kind, protective. They see weakness and feel compelled to defend it, not exploit it. Down in sublevel 3, Daniel replaced a worn coolant pump, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Word had spread through the station about what happened. Maintenance workers were no longer invisible. Other species gave him cautious respect, maintaining careful distance. A young Torvin approached hesitantly. His species was small, herbivorous, frequently targeted by the more aggressive races. "Excuse me, are you Daniel Cross?" Daniel looked up from his work. "I am. Something I can help you with. I just wanted to thank you. Since the investigation, things have been better. For all of us." The Torvin's ears flattened nervously. "Some of the bigger species still push us around sometimes, but it's not like before. You have problems, you report them. The council's actually listening now." Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "And if they don't listen, you know where to find me." The Torvin's eyes widened. "You'd help me too? Even though I'm not Solari, I help people who need help. Species doesn't matter." Daniel smiled genuinely. "That's kind of a human thing. We're pack animals. We collect people who need protecting, and we guard them. It's in our nature." After the Torvin left, Daniel returned to his work. His communicator beeped with a message from Station Command. New maintenance protocols, updated security cooperation procedures, revised worker protections. Small changes, but meaningful ones. Lyra found him during lunch hour, carrying 2 food containers from the commissary. She sat beside him on a cargo crate, her wing completely healed now, membrane whole and healthy. "The delegation wants to meet you," she said, handing him one container. "They're curious about the human who changed Galactic Council policy." "I didn't change policy. I just documented abuse and made sure the right people saw it. You hunted station security through maintenance tunnels and psychologically broke them." "Well, yes, there was that too." Daniel ate his meal calmly. But the evidence was the important part. Fear just made them willing to accept consequences. Lyra was quiet for a moment. "You scared me too, you know, when I saw what you were capable of. The planning, the patience, the complete ruthlessness." "I know. I'm sorry about that." "Don't be." She looked at him directly. "I needed to see it, to understand that weakness isn't permanent, that there are always options, even when you think there aren't." They ate in comfortable silence, watching station personnel move through the corridors. A Kravish security officer passed, saw Daniel, and immediately took a different route. Word had spread. The human maintenance worker was not to be crossed. "Do you think they've actually learned anything?" Lyra asked. "Or are they just afraid?" "Probably both. Fear is the first step. Understanding comes later, if they're willing." Daniel finished his meal. "Some will change because they realize it's right. Others will change because they know there are consequences now. Either way, you're safer. We're safer. All the weak species." "Yeah." Daniel stood, preparing to return to work. "That's the goal." Lyra watched him disappear into the maintenance tunnels, this quiet human who had turned her world upside down. The galaxy had species that were stronger, faster, more technologically advanced. But humans had something else. They remembered being prey, and they refused to let others suffer the same way they once had. Weeks turned to months. The station achieved a new equilibrium. Brudick eventually returned, humbled and cautious, working lower-level security with strict oversight. He never bothered Lyra again, never even looked in her direction. Other stations heard the story. The human who protected a Solari diplomat and exposed systematic abuse. The maintenance worker who defeated armed security through intelligence and planning. The tale spread, growing in the telling, until it became something almost legendary. Humans gained a reputation. Protective, dangerous when provoked, fiercely loyal to those they decided to defend. Species that once dismissed them as weak mammals started reassessing. Daniel Cross remained in sublevel 3, fixing coolant pumps and environmental systems. He preferred it that way. Quiet, unnoticed, just another maintenance worker. Until someone needed help. Then the Predator woke up, patient and intelligent, and absolutely committed to protecting its pack. Lyra eventually became the Solari ambassador to the Galactic Council. She spoke eloquently about cooperation between species, about protecting the vulnerable, about building systems that valued all life regardless of strength. And when aggressive species questioned her authority, challenged her right to speak, she would smile softly and mention that she had friends in maintenance. That was usually enough, because the galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans collect the helpless the way dragons collect gold, and they guard them just as fiercely. In his workshop, surrounded by tools and machinery, Daniel worked on a broken environmental processor. His data pad showed a message from Lyra, thanking him again for everything he had done. He smiled and returned to his work, content in the knowledge that one person, in the right place at the right time, with the right skills and the willingness to act, could change everything. The station hummed around him, safe and peaceful, at least for now, and in the shadows of the maintenance tunnels, a human kept watch, because that's what humans do. They protect their pack.